Hi there, and welcome to the Sword Experience Hollywood podcast. I'm Adrian Paul, and I have David Bethke here with me. Hi, David. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Are you all locked up?
Very much locked up. I've been locked up for day 14, 15, 500 now. I've lost count.
I know, time goes. For those of you that need to know, we are doing this as a remote location, obviously, because getting into a studio right now is rather difficult. So a couple of these will be done over the years as per the regulations, which I hope you are all looking or adhering to, because this is something that is going to change our societies in the way that we actually do business and socialize, I think.
To say the least.
Yeah. Some of you have asked about sword experiences. Those that are going to be in end of July, August time are now still on the agenda. But as this is a fluid situation, nothing is ever certain. This is why we've started the podcast, so that we can actually start sharing with you different things that are coming up, different types of interviews that we're doing, training online, so that you can actually keep your training going and have something to do while you're stuck at home with your loved ones. And one thing is, if you're going to do any training with me, please don't do any of the, don't try getting angry or using any of the moves on your children. So I'll cut you up, like, don't
keep it friendly.
Don't do that.
Yeah, keep it friendly. Train
keep
with
it friendly.
them. Don't train against them.
Exactly. Keep it friendly.
Yeah.
We are definitely keeping our events open and our options open at the moment. All our information will come through our website, so that you can find out more about that. In the meantime, this show is, we're going to be featuring this time on the show a police officer who has been a martial artist for 40 years. But we'll get back to that in a second. His name's Anthony Bernabeo. He's a Harris County Sheriff Officer. He's been a deputy patrolling the district since 2009. And so he's done a lot of things, but we'll talk about him in a second. We are going to be also highlighting our Houston February 8th fight, which we did at the Sword Experience, which was a fight of the film 100. It was done at, we went to actually Navasota, Texas, where Anthony actually was the assistant there. It was 1 hour north of downtown Houston, and we recreated a battle from the episode of the hit CW show, The 100. It was a classic Texas ranch, which was a quick venue to host the event with a wide open space.
Very
and
nice.
Fun sets to help build the story, because as you guys know, we actually, film you and give you a little part to play once you've learned all the choreography that we work with through the numbering system, through the Sword Experience numbering system. So let's talk a little bit about the Patreon stuff, David. I mean, what do we have in store? We have a couple of things that we are sending out each week.
Yes, definitely. So Patreon is something that we're going to be introducing soon, and it's going to be a way for us to really connect with you at home, since, the Sword Experience may not be able to come to your hometown or wherever you live for a while. Patreon is going to be a great way for you to constantly be involved with the Sword Experience, depending on the level that you want to support us by.
Now, I'm going to have to correct you for 1 minute, David, because
right
now it's already been launched. People are listening to this
true.
Once we've launched.
That's
the problem of doing things pre-recorded ahead of time. We have launched it already.
Yes.
You guys are listening to it because you've joined us to listen to the podcast that we're putting out.
So go check out the Patreon right now. We have just launched the Patreon, and it's a great way for you to get, more content from the Sword Experience at home. A lot of stuff, all of the stuff you'll be able to access at home, and you can support us on various levels. I'm just going to go through some of the levels. For example, the members only level, which is just a simple $3 a month. You'll get a digital membership badge, which lets people know that you're supporting the Sword Experience, and you'll get access to things like polls, and we'll follow you on social media. You'll get early access to Sword Experience videos. So it's it's like an exclusive kind of club kind of thing. And then as the levels advance, you'll go to the Critics Corner, which is where Adrian, you'll be doing some film fight insights, which we'll take a classic movie fight or some scenes from movies that involve sword fighting or martial arts or something like that. And Adrian, you'll be giving analyses on these. So we'll talk about where they were filmed, some of the techniques that they used, maybe some Easter eggs, the types of swords that they use. So it'll be a nice, look into, further look into some of your favorite movies, things that you may not know about them. And, you'll be able to see them from a different angle from someone who's been in Hollywood for a long, long time at this point. So, and then
let's leave the long time out of there because,
okay.
I'm trying to play down that now. As I get older, it's like, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah.
No, but I mean, there are a lot of levels, and I think the key thing is we want to bring this. The whole point of the sword experience is an experience. It's not a martial art class. It's an experience for everybody. And the idea of putting this stuff online is for those of you to also get life tips, to get things that are Hollywood. Those interviews that we're doing today, for instance, and that we've already done. We've already done 2 that we've launched. This week we're talking to a real martial artist and police officer. Next week we'll be talking to Mark Makita from Fightology, who first came to the sword experience and helped me with a Highlander fight. He's done many things in different genres and has worked with different actors. So I want you to we want to bring you something here in the podcast that's something that you might be interested in listening to, as well as some of the other things which will be about your lifestyle, about eating right, about taking the right type of travel, experiencing the places the sword experience goes to, and joining us. And we're creating a community here for all those people that actually like to do similar things.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. And that's kind of the one thing that, we try to aim for on social media as well. You guys have been phenomenal, giving us some amazing feedback. And a lot of the feedback that you have given us on socials has influenced where we're going with this Patreon and everything. And the one big thing that we just released is the online training. Adrian, do you want to talk about the online training a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is really a lot of the basics. The sword experience created a numbering system. The reason it was created was after doing 2 years of teaching people, or should I say guiding people through choreography and teaching them the right moves. Obviously, there were many things that came up while doing that, and I realized that to make things easy, the best way to do something was to have a numbering system so that everybody, whether you studied Kali or Arnis, if you would like to call it, or Katana or European broadsword or whatever, you were very clear on what you were trying to do, which was angulations. Or if you are actually just trying to be a fan and learn a choreography, again, hitting the correct position stopped injuring your partner, which I've gone through many times doing things, and it really does help you, and it's much quicker to learn as well. So what the Sword Experience online training is going to do is going to actually really take you into each of those positions. It's going to help you work with footwork. It's going to talk to you about the technique of how to actually manipulate a sword. And from that, it will grow gradually into putting different movements together. It's going to grow from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And we will start as a basic. It will be an introduction to a later, in probably 6 to 8 months, what I would imagine would be a real 1 hour hard training class, which will work your backs, your thighs, your legs, your arms, your shoulders, from all these systems that are all the basics. You need to know what the movements are first before you can really train them, because like many of you know, once you go into a gym, if you don't know quite how to move something or work a piece of apparatus or move a certain type of weight in a certain way, if you do CrossFit, it's very simple. It takes you a long time to figure out how to do that movement. But once you get it, you're really benefiting the muscle it was intended to move. Same thing with the sword experience. Fitness classes or event classes, those will actually help you get fitter, stronger in many other things. It's not just the swords, it's actually a great way to work out. It also will then help you if you want to come and take a journey with us on one of our retreats or to some of the places in Europe to castles or to breweries or abandoned buildings to film a fight that you can be the star of and visit the area, and that gives you the experience that the elite events of the Sword Experience are intended for. So it has a whole rounding of intention over the next year to really get everybody really engaged and working on something that might be a little bit different.
Yeah, so it's a great way just to keep things maintained, and it's you know, it's not like you have to wait for us to keep coming back to your city. It's like this is a great way to, you know, hone your skills, fine-tune everything, make sure that you're doing everything right, and it's, you know, something we wanted to do to just keep bringing new techniques to you guys, and this is something that we're really excited for.
Yeah, so in that vein, as I mentioned, the elite experiences, which are experiences that go to event spaces that we hire so that we can actually film something of interest. The one we used on February 8th was in Houston, and that was as I mentioned before, the classic Texas ranch in an hour outside of Houston in Navasota. Now, we chose a fight called the 100. Those of you who don't know about the 100, it's a CW show. It's a post-apocalyptic show. Now, it's really funny because how many shows have been post-apocalyptic these days, David?
We went through kind of a post-apocalyptic renaissance kind of thing. We had, we had the Hunger Games, which was very much a post-apocalyptic thing. We've got the 100. There was this one show called, what was it called? It starred Jason O'Mara, and I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it was another. They brought dinosaurs back and everything like that. Like post-apocalyptic has been just a big thing.
It's interesting because you've got ones that are like The Handmaid's Tale or The Walking Dead, Rain, which is on Netflix, the Mr. Robot. These are all post-apocalyptic shows. Last Man on Earth,
Mad Max.
Mad Max. I mean, there's so many that we actually have created. Of course, we've gone to the 100 in this Colony, which is on the USA Network. Many of these shows have been popular, and we were kind of wondering why that was. Any of you guys know? Well, we did a little research, and apparently, it was. Let's go to Netflix. Let's talk about that. I mean, and first of all, let's do the definition of a post-apocalyptic show. It means it's an existing or occurring after catastrophically destructive disaster or apocalypse. Basically, a post-apocalyptic world is where nature's just become just as violent as humanity. In fact, we are going through something today which has remnants or notions of that, because we're very lucky at the moment with this virus that it is a virus that only attacks us in a certain way. It doesn't, totally destroy us and could destroy hundreds of millions of people. It does, unfortunately, cause death in many cases, but we're still very lucky that we can still survive this, and it might be just a little bit of a wake-up call. For us. The interesting thing is Netflix, which is a company that has an 81% millennial user base out of its 86.7 million users. Basically, they're the kings of data analysis. They've got algorithms not just to predict hits, but to create them. And they kind of understand the audience, and they design shows purely to appeal to that audience. And when you realize over the last few years they've acquired and commissioned a number of apocalypse-driven shows, including the 100, The Walking Dead, and Between. Well,
Into the Badlands, don't forget that.
Into the Badlands, exactly. It's because the users out there are looking for them, and it's you millennials out there that have been asking for it. So it's really why it's a very hot topic for the millennial market, and they basically predicted that generation wants doom, destruction, and black comedy. So they served it up with a side of nihilism, and a lot of other networks have done exactly the same. So we chose the 100 because it was, for those of you that have not seen it, it's an American post-apocalyptic sci-fi dystopian drama was developed by Jason Rothenberg, and it's loosely based on the book series of the same name by Cass Morgan. It follows a group of young delinquents who have been born on a spaceship, and they've been sent down to Earth to see if it's survivable or not. So we chose that show because it was had one interesting sword fight in it, and decided to do that. And therefore, when we got to the ranch in Navasota, I was looking at it as being one of the colonies that they found when they went there. And when I actually go to different places, we need to sort of talk to different martial artists and different people to help me put this stuff together, because when we have a number of people, we want to make sure everybody gets personal attention. So I actually it was reached out by Anthony Bernabeo, who was, as I mentioned earlier, was from the 40 years of martial arts, from Taekwondo, Hapkido, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and currently teaches Filipino martial arts, HEMA, which is historic European martial arts, and competes in the ACS armored combat sports. So he contacted us through somebody else we'd already worked with in Texas. He was, I found out later, and you'll hear in this interview, he was a very big Highlander fan, and that really was very touching to me, because I don't know where people have come from and who they are, but obviously having a police officer who said that he was a huge fan was a great honor. And I think I was very much happy to hear that he was a big fan, but he also had a lot of experience to bring to the Houston event. And so let's just talk about. I just want to let you hear what Anthony had to say and the interview that we did while we were there that day.
All right, so I'm sitting at. Where are we today, Anthony? We're on a
7D ranch.
7D ranch in the middle of Texas.
In Texas, yes,
Houston,
sir.
Yeah.
We're right outside of Houston, Texas, about an hour. And we're in a place called Navasota, Texas.
Navasota, Texas, yeah. And you're going to help me with the sword experience tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Now, we've been chatting on the way in. You've done like, how many years now?
In total,
50?
In total, actually in total, 40 years of martial arts.
40 years of martial arts. What did you start in?
I started when I was about 7 years old. I started in Taekwondo.
Taekwondo. Why did you choose that?
It was what was available. In all honesty, a kid who I grew up with, Brant, his Sunday school teacher was a Taekwondo instructor. And what the situation was, what got me interested was when I was a child, my father owned gyms. He was a weightlifter, bodybuilder, still is, but he owned a gym, and we had a lot of police officers, sheriff's deputies who worked out at my father's gym, and I used to listen to these guys tell their war stories, as they call it. And in doing so, I realized I wanted to be a police officer. And so I thought, if I want to be a police officer, I need to know how to fight. And I knew a friend of mine who took karate, and he told me about it, and my parents signed me up for it, and I started doing Taekwondo.
And how old were you then?
7.
7? About my son's age, too. And you're a police officer now. Well, you've been telling me a lot of the interesting stuff that you've had as a police officer. You also have Combat Nation, and you have, what was the other gym you had?
Well, with the gym that I'm located at is Combat Nation, and we have another gym we're in the same building called Fighter Nation, which is a professional boxing facility. And so it was all started up by my church. They started up Fighter Nation, and the head instructor is a gentleman by the name, or the head coach is a gentleman by the name of Termite Watkins. Termite was a professional boxer. He had 60 professional wins and 48 knockouts. He was on the same Olympic team, I believe, with Sugar Ray Leonard. He was supposed to go to the Olympics when we actually boycotted the Olympics.
That's got to suck as an athlete.
Yeah,
I know. As an athlete, you must be sitting there going.
I believe at one time he was one of the world's. He was a national champion. He was actually the youngest national champion of his time. Amazing gentleman. And he started it as a youth outreach. Well, I've been watching him since I was 10 years old. And when I found out about it, I went to him and the pastor and said, "Hey, can I be a part of this?" And they were like, "Well, what can you do?" And I told him, "Well, I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. I'm a black belt in Hapkido. I'm a 3rd-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I want to help. I amateur boxed. I amateur kickboxed. I did all that. I've had my butt kicked more times than I could count." But they were like, heck yeah. So they started up Fighter Nation, and then I said, well, we just can't call. I said, let me start my group, and we'll call them Combat Nation, because I was teaching kickboxing and Jiu Jitsu and Filipino martial arts and Wing Chun. And from there, some of my students introduced me to what was called HEMA, which is the Historical European Martial Arts, which I had no clue what that was. But
Not many people do, actually.
Right. And I fell absolutely in love with it. It was awesome. I'm reading these old manuals that were translated, of course.
Right.
And you know, me and all these guys are sitting around trying to talk about, well, if it's this, I think it's done this way. And somebody else say, no, it's done like that. Let's fight it out and try. And it was great. The gentleman introduced me to all that as a gentleman by the name of Chase. Chase Allen introduced me also to Youngsborg Viking, and he runs that organization, which is really, really neat. They are a historical organization that they study the history, the lore, and everything to do with Vikings. And I really like that. Well, crazy enough, one of the gentlemen who did that introduced me to what is called ACS or ACW, Armored Combat Sports or Armored Combat Worldwide. And when I saw that, which was like knights in shining armor, really battling it out. I mean, nobody was pulling any punches. Everybody was trying to knock each other out. I mean, it was crazy stuff. And I just said, I got to get involved. And that's what I've been doing for the past years, you know, just having fun.
Which one do you like the best? I mean, what's your favorite?
Well,
just out of curiosity.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of my all-time favorite martial arts because I could go 100% out and not get hurt. I could tap out when I need to tap, and my partner stops, I stop, start over, and it's all based off of just pure geometry. You know, I've had people twice my size, I could torture their life, and I've had people that I'm twice their size, and they torture me. I can't stop them, and it's really amazing. But when I was able to get into more of the weaponry art, the Filipino martial arts with Paquita Terza, the armored combat sports, and then doing things like what we're doing, I really enjoy it because I'm being able to live out those childhood dreams. You know, of being that kid watching shows like Excalibur and Knights of the Round Table and things like the Three Musketeers, and actually getting to be able to use a sword, and it's a blast. It really is. It's living out a childhood dream. So,
when did you first get into weapons?
Well, when I was doing Taekwondo, actually, one of my instructors...
Because they don't usually have, they don't have a weapon system.
Well, my main instructor, Mr. Ronnie Niemeyer, was real big into nunchucks. And he would do all these nunchuck forms and katas and win tons of competitions. The first time I picked up a pair of nunchucks, I hit myself in the groin, I hit myself in the head, I spacked my hands. I was like, this ain't for me.
Yeah. What did you use? Did you use the wooden ones? Did you use the metal ones?
I had the oak, the octagon-shaped oak with the chain, you know? And I played with him, and I was like, forget this. Well, it just so happened that my other instructor, his assistant is a gentleman by the name of Keith Duncan. He was training in Paquita Terza Kali, a Filipino martial arts system, and he introduced me to that. And when I was able to pick up a bolo and a stick and everything and start moving it like a sword, I fell in love with it. And
it's great movement. It has a lot of flow to it.
A lot of flow. And what I loved was all the counter-for-counter drills and how everything works, and the numbering systems, how it made it so much easier to remember and train. And I really, really enjoyed that. And through them, I was able to meet and train with people from all over, you know. Danny Nasato went to seminars with Ron Bilecki and just some great people. And as I got more and more involved in things, and I met HEMA, and I got into doing HEMA, I met people like a friend of mine in Austin, Anthony Michael Bellonomo, who is how we've come to meet.
He worked with me in Austin,
and meeting just people just from all over. It's just been great.
So, how do you said something a minute ago? It's funny because, first of all, nunchucks. I used to have a pair of the. They were metal inside, and they were heavy metal. Like they were covered in a I don't want to say a plastic, but it was metal base. And I trained with the wooden ones first, and then I trained with and I got fairly good with them. And then I trained with the metal ones, and I stopped for about a month and a half. And when I picked them back up again, I picked the metal ones up immediately, which was the wrong thing to do. because I cracked myself right on the funny bone under my right arm, and my whole arm tingled for a month because it damaged the nerve.
Yeah.
So you've got to do it in stages. Which then brings me to the next thing, which is you talked about numbering system. There are so many sword forms, so many. What do you think? And a lot of them have names to this numbering system. What do you think is the easiest way to learn a numbering system? Because everybody has something different.
Well, I mean, everybody, and it's the same thing when you're studying any kind of martial arts system, whether it's Japanese-based or Filipino or Brazilian or whatnot. The techniques are all relatively the same, but people have a different name for it, you know? In, say, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, you would have what they would call a V1 lock. Well, in American wrestling, it would be Americana, but it's all the same move.
Right.
Well, the numbering systems I like because you don't have to learn a complex name. I like it because if I say, hey, a number one, well, if you know that system, hey, this is a number one, instead of trying to remember a crazy name. Or number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. And it makes it easy to break them up. Hey, you're going to do number 1 through 4, or 7 and 8, or 5 through 9. And once they go, okay, well, these numbers are the same as those numbers from that other group, or whatever, then it just makes it so much easier to teach, and it makes it easier to remember.
Because I noticed you picked up the sword experience numbering system very quickly. I think based on the fact that these are just moves that have numbers attached to them. The reason we started it was obviously to let people learn them very quickly, because I had a sword experience, which we're doing tomorrow.
Correct.
People don't have a lot of time really to remember the move, let alone the name behind the move. So a 1 or a 2 is a lot easier to keep in their brain.
When my first experience with, if they're talking about and I'm going to slaughter this because I'm horrible at the words, but like in your German where they would say like a Oberhau or a Underhau, you know, they're talking about overhead strike, underhead strike, and you have a specific name for all of them. When you just say a number 1, it's real easy to remember that word, number 1.
Yeah, right.
You know, so it just makes it to where you take out a lot of the complexities from somebody trying to pronounce something to, okay, it's simple. I know my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can count. Then it makes the strike so much easier to learn. You could concentrate on what you're actually doing instead of a name. When
you were talking about HEMA earlier on, there's 2 systems, the German system and the Italian system, is that correct?
Oh,
or is there more than that?
I think there's a lot more than that. It depends on what all you're studying. And from what my involvement has been, you have all these with the treatises, the different books, and it depends on what book you're studying, depending on what weapon you're studying. What I like to study the most is what a lot of people I think kind of start with is what they call the I-33. And some people might say, no, the 133. And what that is the title of a book. And that book specifically is over what they call sword and buckler. Right. So it's the sword, like a one-handed sword and a small little shield.
Yeah.
And I like that one. That's what I was first introduced to and I really fell in love with. Now, I know friends of mine who study nothing but Italian rapier. I've met some other people who are like, no, I do Spanish rapier. Okay. Everybody has their flavor.
Right.
Long sword, sword and dagger, you know, many different things. I've met some people who are like, we don't deal with that. We want to just learn the traditional European historical wrestling. And I'm like, okay. And there's, in a lot of the manuals, you will see techniques. Some of it's just dagger work. And it all depends on what that person falls in love with. With me, I like the sword and buckler because it transitions into so many other things that I do.
Well, I also find that one-handed is somewhat difficult because you have to know what to do with the other hand.
Correct.
So with a buckler, if you're knowing where that hand should be or where it should, otherwise you're going to get it cut off at some point in a real fight.
Right. And the neat thing about the sword and buckler when you look at it is that buckler is mainly a complex hilt. It's made to protect your sword hand. So at least in the I-33, there are some where they will separate sword and buckler and use them differently. But in the I-33, it's mostly that buckler is wrapping itself somewhere around that weapon hand to protect it, to make sure you don't get it cut off. And to me, I could see how it slowly evolved all the way to what there would be rapier, where your rapiers have that beautiful swept hilt around them and everything to protect the hand. Well, if I have that on this hand, I don't need anything on my other hand. Well, let me put a dagger in that hand now. So now I have a 2-weapon system.
I like two hands. Personally, I also did Chinese sword, which is the two short swords. The short, which
the butterfly type sword.
Butterfly type knife, which is very similar to Kali
and Wing Chun.
And Wing Chun. It's exactly so it has that double. I actually like it because it breaks. It does different things, but the ability to use two hands kind of balanced me rather than staying with one hand.
Correct. Yeah.
But you also teach.
Yes, sir.
And what do you think is the hardest thing about teaching?
Well, teaching in general can be very, very hard. One of the things I try to do is I interview each and every person before I ever start teaching them. And I want to know about their background, their history. If it's a little kid, what kind of sports have they done? If they've done absolutely nothing, what kind of shows do they watch? So I could try to figure out how I can relate to that person. I have students from every walk of life. A couple of the kids, like I'll ask them and they'll say, like with some of the young kids, that they did dance, jazz, tap, ballet, traditional. So it helps me to be able to relate to them. If I ask them, do you know what a kickball change is? And they're like, oh yeah, it's this, and that. Okay, well then this move is based similar to that. And I show them and I use the kickball change and it clicks. Or if you have a kid who's done nothing but played baseball his whole life and you're trying to teach him that hip rotation to throw a punch or to throw a kick, you tell him, hey, how do you hold the bat? How do you swing? You see how you're moving your hip? Try throwing your kick the same way. And when you see those little light bulbs go off in their head, that's a great thing. Some of them really, really connect and they really get it. Some of them you just got to keep on working with. And then I found out that sometimes you might be trying to get something past or to a student and you just don't have the right verbiage. But then you ask your assistant, hey, teach him this. And he might say the exact same thing, but just a slightly different.
Yeah.
And
I know.
Boom, it clicks.
Yeah, it's funny because, and I think from my from my experience, is that people get frustrated with not being able to achieve something. One of the things I tell people a lot of the time is, if you can't do great things today, do small things greatly, and tomorrow you'll have great things happen for you. And because over and over again, suddenly something like you just said will click, and you go, oh, that's what it is. Because a lot of the time I think we overcomplicate. You overcomplicate something, say, okay, do this move. And I've seen it before. I'm like, no, you're overthinking that. It's just this. No, but shouldn't I move my shoulder? No, just relax and just. So I think we do that. There's a funny. There was a story I heard about they did all these interviews with kids and with adults, and they asked them the same question. And one thing for a kid was they said, okay, so if there's a burning building and it's a fire and there's a person at the top floor, there's somebody at the top floor, when the police get there, how do they get to the top of the building? Anybody know that answer? Well, the simple question kids went, they go, well, the policemen don't go to the fires, firemen do.
Go, yeah.
It's a simple thing, but you go, well, the adults will go, well, the police would need to do this. And it's the different way we look at it because we don't look at the simple way of doing it. And that's the simplest analogy I can come up with is how a child would look at a situation. From your experience, what other things have you? Because obviously you utilize your martial arts in your work as well. Because it's you told me you've actually been in the prison system. You've been in as a deputy. You've done. How has that affected you in the way that you handle people, having this training?
Well, most people would think that training your whole entire life, all you want to do is go out there and use it. And in actuality, all the training in my life has helped me get to the point where I learned how to talk to people. I have confidence. I know what I can do. I know what I'm physically capable of doing. I don't want to do that, though. I don't want to have to put my hands on people. So I talk to people. I've learned that I could be calm and cool and collective and relaxed and talk to people while keeping my guard up and being able to protect myself. But to be able to be as nice as I possibly can be when I'm talking to people, to get them to do what I need to do. Because, we deal with people from every walk of life being an officer, and I don't know if that person is the nicest, sweetest person in the world, or they just so happen to, and I hate to say it this way, but snapped and killed their whole family. You know, if I'm making a traffic stop, I don't know what this person has done before my car pulled in behind them and I saw them yield through a stop sign. They could have just robbed the convenience store, and I could be walking up on somebody who thinks that I'm going to put them in jail for something I have no clue about, you know? So being with all the training and throughout the martial arts my whole life, and being in competitive fighting and been in street fighting, I have a little bit of an awareness, and it has given me the ability to sit back and talk to people and look for those clues on their body language, how they act.
Now, how do you train because I know you also do training for cadets as well.
Yes, sir.
How do you get them ready for something of that nature, to teach them these things? Because obviously not everybody's in the right mindset or has the ability to do that. How do you sort those out? How do you work that?
Well, whenever I start teaching guys and gals at the academy, one of the things I always ask everybody is this. Usually to a group of people, I'll usually ask them, hey, I know everybody in here probably has something they love and care about more than anything else in this world. What are you willing to do to go home to them? In life, you have two choices. You could be a winner or you could be a survivor. What are you? Well, 50% of the time, most people will always say, I'm a survivor. And then I hit them with, well, as an officer, you can survive in a hospital bed as a quadriplegic, which is someone who has no use of arms or legs. They're basically a vegetable with tubes and needles sticking out of your body. You could survive that way. But a winner gets to go home and tuck that little one into bed at night. A winner gets to go home and sleep with his prom queen or her prom king, or you get to take care of your parents. That's what a winner gets to do. So what are you willing to do to be that winner? Now, I say that because I want them to have the mentality to know what they're going in for. Because some people think it's a game. They think it's like TV, what they see in the movies, and it's not. People out there really want to do harm to you because they don't want you to stop them from doing whatever it is they're doing. Most people that I deal with are some of the nicest people in the world. But there are those few out there who really don't care about anyone or anything else. They're going to do what they want. And they don't care if they have to go through you to do it. And we're kind of like that last part of society that has to put them in. We're the ones who have to make them accountable and put them in jail. You know? So when you're dealing with people, I tell people, you know, you got to be ready to do things you don't want to do. And you might have to, you know, lay down your life to save another person. That's part of the job. That's what we signed up for. So when I'm teaching them defense tactics, my goal is to make sure that they go home the same way that they went to work. No more holes, no less holes, not bleeding, and that they did their job to the best of their ability. That's all I ever try to do. If I could better their life or teach them one thing that helps them get home to their families, then I did a good thing.
Well, Anthony, I think tomorrow will be fun. I can't really top that in a sense.
Let me tell you this. Sir, let me tell you. To all those who got me where I am today, I have to thank them. And there's so many people I can never thank. I can't thank that many. But those bucket lists that people have, this is a bucket list for me.
Oh, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
I'm getting to pal around and learn and train and teach with the Highlander, okay? Now, I was in my 20s, okay? I was in my early 20s when the Highlander TV show came out, okay? I had just gotten married, everything. I was actually just hiring on that year with the sheriff's office in 92. If I remember correctly, is when the first season of the TV show came out.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Okay? I became a police officer in November of 92. Okay, and I watched it every year. I mean, I love the show. I can't say I grew up watching it because I was already in my 20s. You know, I don't want to say.
I'll take it. It's okay. I'll take it.
Yeah, I don't want to say I was a little kid, you know, because I don't want you thinking you're that much older than me. But this is truly for my friend Anthony Bernabeo, who made the recommendation for me to work with you, I can't thank him enough.
No, I thank you for coming. I mean, seriously, what makes my experiences worthwhile is the fun, is the TV, but also the technical knowledge that I might not be able to bring for certain things, but I have the people that I work with are able to add to that, and I think that is where we have something unique compared to just teaching people martial art techniques. Mm-hmm. It's a whole interest to get you excited about doing something physical, to be able to move in your life.
Oh yes.
To be able to get up off the chair, in front of the TV, whatever, and just go and do something different. Go and do something, and it might inspire you to do some fitness or something else. So.
Well, I could sit there and some people will laugh at me for it, but even I was in my 20s, I was still standing in front of the TV mimicking the moves you were doing back then. I had my boak and everything, and I worked those techniques, because I thought it was just beautiful to watch and do. And to be able to actually do it with you physically is just awesome.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to tomorrow. I'll probably get you to talk about after the event to see what the thoughts were after the event.
Okay.
We'll do that on camera.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. And you guys out there, we'll be back soon.
Ever want to do a sword fight from your favorite film? Now you can. Learn from the best as the Sword Experience travels to convention halls across America, to ancient aqueducts and to historical castles of kings and queens of Europe. Sword professionals, budding bladesmen, and those who want to feel like an action hero for a day are ready to take part in the Sword Experience challenges. Experiences that will leave you breathless, literally. Sign up now at swordxp.com and just maybe you'll discover another you.
You don't think a police officer wants to come by and swing a sword with you?
Yes, exactly. And as a Highlander fan, sometimes the stars align just perfectly for people.
Yeah, and he's very gracious. What I find is people that are in the military and police officers, very, very gracious, very nice man. Lethal, but very nice. And, the amount of martial artist instructors and teachers that I know, many of them are very much the same because they have nothing to prove in a sense.
Right.
It's not that I've got to beat you up. It's I'm here to teach you, and I take respect in being able to teach you. I'm very he has a lot of humility, I found.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's one thing I'm looking forward to this podcast is we don't know everyone that we're going to interview. We're going to have comic creators, we're going to have police officers, we're going to have martial arts experts. There's so many people that are going to be brought onto this podcast. I'm really excited to see who else is going to be coming on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously right now we're probably going to be doing a lot of remote access.
Yeah,
usually we actually have them in the studio, like we do when we do Peace Farm Radio. We're in the studio at Universal a lot. Well, that, again, is another remote podcast that's happening right now because Universal is shut down. So we can't go over there currently. So these things are important. I mean, actually, Anthony came and helped us the following week when we went to Dallas, but we'll talk about that next week when we talk about the event we did in Dallas later in the month. But let's talk a little bit about the 100. I mean, have you seen it, David?
I regretfully have not seen it. It sounds awesome, though.
No, it's kind of fun. It follows, as I say, a group of post-apocalyptic survivors, chiefly a group of criminal adolescents.
Right.
The lead is a girl called Eliza Taylor. Now, what's really interesting, she plays Clark Griffin. And what's really interesting, I've met some of these actors. I've actually met Bob Morley, who plays Bellamy, and I've met also a couple of the others there. And there's some very good actors. But what they've done with the cast on this, they've done a sprinkling of young actors in there, and then supported them with some very well-known actors who have some very good credits. And
Gotcha.
I like the thing that Eliza said. She actually said she didn't actually audition, and I know this process so well because this happened to me when I first came to LA. The same type of thing. She said she'd been living in LA for about a month, and her credit card was stolen, and all her money was taken. And they spent it at Home Depot, Right. But she was ready to go back to Australia because she's originally Australian, but she didn't know quite how she was going to survive.
Right.
She got a call from her manager saying that she'd done an audition a couple of months ago on a film, and it had been seen by the producers of this TV show called The 100. They wanted her to go in and read. So she did. She read the script, loved it, went in, read the next day, and got the part, and was on the plane to Vancouver to shoot a role, and, within days. That happened to me when I did Highlander.
Right.
It was kind of one of those things. Went in, did an interview, did this, did that. Literally once, by the time they made up their mind, they're like, okay, you're leaving in 3 days to go to Vancouver and shoot.
Wow.
So it's interesting how it's not what you ever think it is. Your life can change in this business, and that's why I think this business is so popular with young people, because it can change in a heartbeat.
Things can change just that quickly.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Briefly on the 100, is there a lot of sword fighting in that show, or is there like a mix of gunfighting, or what's the combat like in that show?
The combat in there is a mix of swords. I mean, a lot of it is weapons oriented. There's different types of action, and since the Sword Experience is an action-based event company, we want to highlight all the action type of shows so that you might get to see them. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, I mean, but it does show different sword stuff. Not a huge amount of sword one-on-one. It's more what they do in Game of Thrones, and that's kind of become something today where it's more real, where you're in a real sword fight. You're not there doing 15 moves. You're there doing possibly 3 and it's done, or 1 or 2.
Right.
So if you look at any of the big series that have that, the fights don't last that long. They're brutal and more realistic in a sense.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, no, the show sounds great. You said it's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is also, talk about her being Australian. Another of the leads, Thomas McDonald, who plays Finn, who actually his character really like. He's like the guy you can't really trust in a sense. He's another Australian-born actor.
Okay.
There's many of them.
Yes.
There's a Scot in there too. Well, he's half Scot. He's I really like Henry and Cusick.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking him up right now. That's crazy. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, he began his career as a classic theatre actor. So that's the interesting thing. His roles include Dorian Gray, Rupert Everett in Hamlet. He's done a bunch of things, but he was also his most known. Many of you may know him from the ABC series Lost, which was originally a recurring guest star in the second season, which he received actually an Emmy nomination for. But he then became a main cast member in season 3 to 6. And what I found was funny that actually, it was something that happened because he knew it was either the director or the producer was his neighbor, and they kind of put the seed into, and they kind of said, "Oh yeah, why don't you cast for this?" It's always weird sometimes where people get cast from in these shows.
And that's just like lends to the whole Hollywood notion of it's always about who you know kind of thing. Like, you never know when a neighbor or that person that you're, waiting behind the line in the bank, like, may become your next big, break in life or something like that. And I think that's really fun.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've watched the 100. I kind of like it. I try and watch a lot of the shows I can. The great thing about having Netflix or Amazon or some of these other streaming networks is that you can binge watch them.
Right, exactly.
One thing like Game of Thrones, you couldn't binge watch. You had to watch it week to week, which frustrated me because that was a show I really, really liked.
Right. Yeah, no, that was a show that a lot of people really, really liked. But the binge watching thing is good because you also don't have to wait for the next episode to come on. Like, you don't have to build your schedule around your favorite shows. They're on whenever you want them to be. Yeah.
And, on April of last year, in 2019, the series was actually renewed for a 7th season, which is now going to consist apparently of 16 episodes.
Oh, wow.
And it's set to premiere on May 20th. Again,
Okay.
we're not exactly sure whether that's going to be now, because obviously all different, depends on whether they finish shooting. I would imagine they have, based on knowing the production schedule of a lot of these shows. Most of the time, doing 16 episodes like that would take you probably somewhere in the region of about 5 months, 6 months. So if they started shooting in June, they were probably already done by the time this crisis held. So therefore, you're probably going to be seeing it on the CW after that day. Although this will be it will conclude with this 7th season. This was an announcement that was made in August 2019.
Got it. So it sounds like it is going to get a proper ending then, which unfortunately a lot of shows don't get.
Yeah, that is a shame, isn't it? You know, it kind of disappears. They kind of did that to Highlander. I said, what happened to him? But you know, when I was doing Highlander, the last season, we did a back-to-back 2-part episode of what would life have been like without Bunker McLeod in it.
Yeah,
which is interesting because you know there was a show I was watching last night. Actually, it was what was it? It was a show I watched, and one person changed history, and it affected all these other things along the line. And sometimes you don't quite realize quite what your contribution to life is.
Right.
The decisions you make can really, you know, change things that you have no control or awareness of. And that was much like Bunker McLeod was, although people are like, well, what happened? I wish something happened at the end. Well, you know, you can't end it with like, oh, here it is. Originally, the producers had wanted me to, or the cast to sit there and take a glass of champagne and look at the camera and say, thank you for the past 6 years, sorry. Which I'd said, no, it's not really. This is an iconic character that you have here. You know, we really need to go out with something a little bit better. So, which I think we did. But you could never, like, it was never really an ending. I think we'll see what happens with the 100, whether that happens too.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. I'm excited to see how the show ends.
Anyway, I think we are close to the end here. I hope you guys look on our Patreon page to see what we've got going on. As David mentioned, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. There's also Facebook Live with me. There's our, as we film, Fight Insights, which are the choreography and different fights, and we were talking about them, all the interesting facts about those, plus many, many other little things that I think you'll all be quite excited about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Oh, yeah, no, it's all great, and it's all something that we've been planning for a long, long time, and we're finally glad that it's live. So definitely go check it out, and we're excited to bring you even more stuff in the future. And we're excited to finally be able to interact with you online, because as much as I like doing it with you on social media, doing it live is even better.
Well, you know, I think like anything, we had been talking about this for a very long time, about putting it online purely and simply because that was where I was able to reach a lot of people I wasn't able to take events to. But, you know, it's something that I realize is that problems such as this situation we have ourselves in is really only an opportunity for creativity, and it's an openness for it gives you a chance to create something you might not have thought about before. So, in closing, this is Adrian Paul and David Bethke. We will see you next week. We will be talking with Mark Makita next week, and we'll be highlighting The Walking Dead next week. We're going to be working a little bit on The Walking Dead, about that show and the event that we did in Dallas with yours truly. This is Adrian Paul.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. See you next week, guys.
See you guys later.